Porkins Policy Radio, offering a unique perspective on everything: geopolitics, culture creation, the reality of the world we live in. Coming to you live from New York City, your host, Pierce Redmond.
Okay, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Porkins Policy Radio. As always, I'm your host, Pierce Redmond. You can find this show here at American Freedom Radio, AmericanFreedomRadio.com, as well as on my website, which is PorkinsPolicyReview.com. And I am always on YouTube and iTunes. You can follow me through RSS, and you can always follow me on Twitter at Porkins Policy. And, of course, if you would like to help support my work, then you can always go to patreon.com/Pierce Redmond, and you can become a subscriber. I've got a brand new subscriber podcast that it should be out by the time you're listening to this right now, or it might be out in a day or two. But so, of course, that you can support my work there. And, of course, I also encourage everyone out there to support American Freedom Radio, and you can always click on the donate button on AmericanFreedomRadio.com, or you can also become a subscriber through Patreon for American Freedom Radio. So lots of different ways to support all the stuff that I do. Well, today is a jam-packed episode. I don't want to babble on too much more. This is the episode that I had promised I was going to cover last week. It's going to be dealing with the sort of America post Charlottesville. It's definitely going to be probably something of a darker conversation. So reminder, if anybody out there would prefer to, listen to something a little bit more upbeat, I definitely encourage everyone to go check out last week's episode with my sister, Emma Redmond, where we discuss Orphan Black, a much more uplifting episode. But we have to discuss what has been going on, the past week or so. And to join me in this discussion is a good friend of the show, and someone that I instantly wanted to talk and get on, get on the show to discuss this. Good friend Chuck Ochelli from the Ochelli Effect, Ochelli.com. Chuck, how are you?
You know, I'm doing pretty good, Pierce. I got to tell you that I'm glad that you selected me to do this today, because I am not in the mood ever to pull punches about conversations that need to be had. And sometimes it's good to dig into the listener's psychology. So, you know what? I want to reiterate your warning from earlier. This is not going to be a pleasant conversation. And the reason is that we need to face up to some realities here. It's got to get done. And only an independent voice in media is going to do that. Otherwise, there's going to be a lot of hand-wringing, a lot of ridiculousness, a lot of discussions about, well, gee, are we supposed to recognize, Civil War history? And are we doing this? And what about Donald Trump? And Donald Trump really has very little to do with what it is we're going to have to unpack here today, Pierce. So, again, thanks for having me join you. I know this is going to sound really, really rough. So, again, if you're not in the mood to get a little bit of truth smacked upside your head, I suggest you listen to one of Pierce's other podcasts. Okay.
Yes, exactly. Well, I mean, Chuck, I almost don't even know where to begin. You had me on your show a couple weeks ago, and this was after our illustrious dear leader Trump was bloviating about carpet bombing North Korea back to the Stone Age, and you asked me the question, I think right when we started the show, am I having a stroke? And I mean, I throw that question back to you, Chuck. Am I having a stroke? I mean, what in God's name is going on? Give me your initial just sort of reaction to the situation, because for me, when this riot essentially broke out in Charlottesville, I happened to be at work on my phone, obsessively looking on Twitter and reading and tweeting to other people, and I was getting upset, and then I called up Tom Secker, and me and Tom are sort of going back and forth, and we're watching the news, and we're talking, and just so much going through my head. But what was your how are you feeling right now? Because it's been a few days, and FYI, we are pre-recording this, so we might be a little out of date with some stuff because it's a very fluid situation. So don't complain and stuff, because I think it doesn't even matter the little nitty gritty. Every day there's like a new detail added on. But
right.
What are you feeling just sort of right now as we speak?
Well, I'm thoroughly disgusted. I'm also kind of surprised, and usually I'm not surprised by these situations when they emerge. Let me wind it back to when we were talking, just last week.
Yeah.
Seems like a lifetime ago now, doesn't it? And we were talking about the real possibility of going to war with North Korea. Gee, this might be a serious thing that's happening here because our commander-in-chief can't keep his mouth shut. He can't operate in a reasonable diplomatic fashion. We talked about that. That was a real thing. There was other stuff going on there, and of course in the background at all times. The idea that there was this collusion between the Trump administration and Russia. None of that is in the equation or discussion today any longer, is it? No. Okay. So let's first keep that in mind. That we have an excellent distraction here, whether it is organic or manufactured. And you know what? I was immediately sickened by the fact that that there were so many people calling themselves alternative media personalities who were out there immediately screaming, "This is all manufactured. Look at Antifa. They hire their protesters. The white nationalists are hired." Everybody's getting hired, but nobody's got a job, Pierce. Let me tell you. The first thing that I noticed when it came to this situation was the night before the real incident that everybody's been talking about, which is this this torchlight, whatever it is, I don't know, torch song.
Vigil.
Yeah, I mean, what Torch Song Trilogy that was a Broadway play some years back, right? It was like the Torch Song, I don't know, white supremacy out there. These guys with Home Depot or excuse me for bringing up a brand name, or Lowe's tiki torches out there. And the first guy to really call him out, publicly on social media and all that was a big shocker to me, which was Michael Rappaport.
Yeah.
And actually, this is a guy who I really don't think much of, never did. Remember him from the movie Zebrahead and all that. Mm-hmm. And I guess in some circles he's still famous, whatever. But the fact is that he was immediately out there going, "Look at these punk asses walking around with tiki torches screaming about how they're the superior race." And meanwhile, he said, "Look, on a Friday night or whatever, how come you guys aren't out getting laid instead of doing this?" And look, as brutally ugly as that sounds, and as, I don't know, sexist or whatever as that may sound, fact is that young guys, what are they out there doing with torches and doing this? Oh, excuse me. They're chanting things like blood and soil, a phrase which they don't even understand. They're out there, "You will not replace us. Jews will not replace us." All of this wonderful language, okay, which has been amped up, not just since Trump started running. This stuff has gone on, and here is where, again, I am going to blame the very people that say they do the same kind of stuff that you and I do, Pierce. The alternative media. I'm hearing about the alt-left. I'm hearing about the alt-right. I'm hearing about the alt. You know what? Let us remember first the alternative media, who were embracing Vladimir Putin for a long time, who started embracing listen, we could argue about the minutia of the Holocaust. We could discuss exactly what was going on during World War II, how there was a lot more than one motive, a lot more than, yes, I said it, to go to war. It wasn't about freeing Jews from the concentration camps. I assure you, there was a lot more to go along that narrative. It was not all about that. Yes, that was one of the results. Yes, there was a reality there. Yes, there was the Third Reich. Hitler was not a hero. I don't care how many of these alternative media people are starting to turn to that narrative, the greatest story never told and all that garbage. Okay? Did he indeed do some good things for the German people? Sure. You don't listen. Nobody gains a position of leadership, okay, by simply showing up and going, I'm going to be evil. It doesn't work that way, okay? It doesn't work that way in literature. Every villain is the hero in his own mind. Now, revisionist history is not something that you and I are against, but realistic history is something that, I'm sorry, we're insisting upon. This is why we want the revision, okay? Anyway. Moving back to this whole thing from this Tiki Torch Vigil March, blah, blah, blah. These people don't even understand what it is they're doing. Okay, fine. I figured idiots had their run. Oh, okay, there's some sort of Confederate statue here. Most of them, by the way, just point of fact, were not installed to commemorate individuals who died. Okay, they were not installed at times when it was, a commemorative, because it was commensurate with sitting there and memorializing something to teach a lesson in history or to venerate an individual or anything like that in a way that, because they immediately equivocate these ideas of, what about the Lincoln Memorial? What about this? Because Lincoln, point of fact, was not as anti-slavery as the history books like to tell you. But here it is. Yes, was George Washington a slave owner? Sure he was. Was Thomas Jefferson a slave owner? Sure he was. But sedition against the U.S. government and these people as symbols, they're not there to commemorate a historical event. They were installed at times when people of color, generally speaking, take a look at when they were actually constructed and put into place.
The 50s.
The 50s. Why, Pierce? You know why, don't you?
No, I mean, this is all about continuing segregation. This is about empowering white racists at a time when, God forbid, other people attempt to seek out their own freedom to be treated properly under the law. So yeah, they erect these bullshit statues. And, just one thing there, because, you mentioned what about George Washington, Thomas Jefferson? I don't even get how that is a fucking retort to the argument. Yeah, they were slave owners. Why are we even loving it's sort of, then it becomes that there's good slave owners and bad slave owners. If you're a liberal, it's like, well, Thomas Jefferson is fine, even though he was a rapist, of all of his slaves. Not all of them, but you know what I'm saying. And then it's like, if you're a right winger, it's like, who cares? Yeah, everyone's a slave owner. Let's just support all the slave owners. I don't understand how that's even a response to any of this. It's like, yeah, they're all horrible. Again, and then oh God, I think I just I'd lost it. Go ahead, Chuck. I'll remember what I was going to say. There's another point that I wanted to. Oh, that's it. These white nationalists that want to preserve America, and keep out all the undesirables, the Mexicans and the blacks and the Jews and the Asians and everybody, and they want to preserve America, maintain America. We've got to be nationalist, but they are, praising people that, as you said, were seditionists. Now, and I'm not trying to get into a whole argument over sedition and do states have the rights to secede and all of that kind of, that's a different argument. But again, it's like, so you're a white nationalist, yet you want to support people that wanted to break up America, the nation, that you claim to be preserving. This is the intellectual dishonesty amongst all of these morons, absolute morons. Some of them with varying degrees of capability of attempt. They dress up their moronic argument with a lot of sophisticated words and phrases and stuff that make them appear to be intelligent. Yet, once you start stripping it away, they're as fucking stupid as, any other, moronic, white power idiot who's basically just this, insignificant, whiny little person. But anyway, Chuck, I'll throw it back to you because I don't want to, get too into it right in the beginning of the show.
No, it's okay. It's just that I'm trying to get to, I'm trying to just give a snapshot of the, like you said, intellectual dishonesty and completely conflicted points of view of these people. I want to save America by preserving the statues of those who actually raised an army against the Union. Now, look. I could tell you that personally, after looking through this myself, I have my doubts as to whether the Union was created as it is represented to people, as if the United States, even in and of itself, is a legitimate construct to begin with. And I don't even have to go back as far as the genocide of the native people here. But hey, let's not forget them as well. I mean, they're part of the equation. The blood on this soil is really theirs. Let us never forget that. Anyway, moving forward with it, though, you see a lot of really ill-informed and illegitimately intellectually dishonest individuals coming forward with this idea about preserving history. It's not about preserving history. It's about preserving a symbol of intimidation. Yeah. And that's what it was. Now, you want to tell me, well, gee, why don't we take down these other I've got no objection to you. Matter of fact, I'll tell you what, if the people don't want to have to stare at this, if the people that have to deal with it on a daily basis in a public space don't want to look at it, I say leave it to the will of the people. Whatever symbol should stand there is just fine. But why is it that these things are going on? It's pretty interesting that, that again, we got to go back to Agent Orange. Trumpster there. It's pretty interesting that this guy turns around and allegedly donates his, salary over to the Park Service, for preservation of exactly these kind of monuments, by the way. This is exactly where that money's going, folks. Did you know that? Okay, interesting. This guy who thinks he wants to preserve history, even though he makes it up when he wants to put it on his own golf course, talking about a river of blood. This guy who makes it up every time he puts out a tweet about some other illegitimate factoid that has no historical relevance or basis in fact, based on what any legitimate historian would tell you. The whole thing about pig's blood and bullets and all that. Oh yeah, well, doesn't even bear repeating as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, back to it. Yeah, fine. All right. So if these white nationalists simply went away after they had their little display, I would say, look, I still support the idea that free speech must be there. The reactions of other people bothered me too, where it was like, look, these people are despicable and they should be outlawed. No, I don't think they should be outlawed. But here's the problem. Your free speech does not come without some level of responsibility. So when you encourage, entice, incite criminal activity with your free speech, you're now a criminal. Okay? I can say anything I want. But if I'm encouraging directly somebody to commit a criminal act, that's not free speech, Pierce. Yeah. Matter of fact, if I turned around and I made an agreement with you and I said quite freely, I would like to see someone die and therefore I'm going to pay you in order to assassinate another human being, am I protected under the First Amendment to say these things, Pierce? No, I'm not. Okay, so very simple. If it leads to criminal activity, it's a problem. If it's just disgusting, deplorable, ridiculous, and absolutely retarded, and yes, I'm willing to use that word retarded because to me it's a scientific term, and I don't care if your PC ass don't like it.
No,
it is retarded. It's retarded. Okay? I didn't mean you, Pierce. I'm just saying for the listeners' sake. The bottom line is this is retarded. This is what we're dealing with. But you know what? You have the freedom to be retarded here in the artist formerly known as America, and it's all right. I'll live with that. However, the next day, we have this mess in the streets. And of course, it is very typical. Do we know that there are individuals who come in to incite violence? Some of them simply for fun. Some of them we could speculate about, and we could even occasionally just come within about a hair's length of proving that that they are supported by or hired by somebody else. Absolutely, we can. However, what these people do. They're not the majority of the crowd. The majority of the crowd are individuals that are sucked in because they agree with the sentiments which have been passed around. It was interesting to see this piece of literature that was put around. I don't know if you saw it, where it was claimed that this is what the Antifa people are about, right? That they are out to deal with the anti-fascists, the anti-imperialists because of their Hebe masters. Yeah. Yes, that's exact. I'm quoting, by the way. The word was spelled H-E-E-B. That's what the word was. I said this conversation was going to get unpleasant. I meant it. And there you go. Now, I found this pretty interesting because I've never known a leftist to use that word. And the structure of this thing, black, white, red, of course, was very interesting as well. And it just looked to me like a wholly fabricated piece of counterintelligence. Do I think that the intelligence agencies are involved in some of this? Sure. Do I think that there is probably individuals who like to incite things? Everybody screams about George Soros constantly, forgetting the Koch brothers all the time because, after all, they could buy and sell them. And they're right-wing, so they couldn't possibly be out there to be provocateurs. The bottom line is that, sure, there are hired guns here, but the majority of the people in those crowds are not. And then we have to fast forward to what started to unfold the next day. And what I saw and what you were obsessed with looking at was just so disgusting and unbelievable to me that this is happening in the year 2017, that this is happening at a time when we need to get our focus together as people if we're going to get anything done, because nothing is being done on our behalf. We are being encouraged to be at each other's throats constantly. And what do we see? Individuals with riot shields, bats, other weapons, mace, helmets, tables, mace, going at each other. And this is before this young woman died too, right? This is before all of that. We see all of this unfolding, and different people are screaming, this is the leftists attacking us. This is the right-wingers attacking us. There were individuals that were beaten that were not involved in the march, but were in close proximity to it. Some of them criminally assaulted in very severe ways. And you know what? There's still a lack of arrests for the individuals that were assaulted all over the area. A lot of violence was loosed. And why? Over what? I ask again. You know what it is over, Pierce? It's over the labels that they have ascribed to us. It's over the labels which have been encouraged among us. It's over these separations, these partitions between types of people, allegedly. I say this all the time, and I'm going to say it on your show too. I don't know where any white people are, because white people don't seem to exist to me. Why do I say that? Because you know what? Take a piece of paper out of a notebook, a general, standardized notebook, and take a look at the majority of that piece of paper, even if it's got lines on it. And I dare you to find a human being that is exactly that tone. Next, I will tell you this. I don't know where black people are either. I don't see black people. There's lots of brown people of all sorts of shades, but black people, I've seen some people that are pretty dark and pretty damn close to black, but not quite black. So I don't necessarily understand this black and white clash, except that it has been encouraged for a very long time, and it is literally part of the American experience. Now, I'm not sure how deep we are into the hour, but I do want to make sure we talk about the psychology of this, why this is so deeply ingrained in us. And also, one other thing, there is a difference between a racialist and a racist. It may be a fine line, but I want to talk about that too, because this is part of the equation. So, your thoughts as we start, and meanwhile, we're not even up to the part where the young woman dies and the car crash happens. No, I'm just talking to you about my impressions as it emerges here.
No, and I want to get to that. A couple things, though, that just sort of popped into my head when you were talking there. One is this, it's all agent provocateurs. Everybody is a Fed or a Soros agent or some. There's never, as you said, never any mention of the Koch brothers. any of the far-right Christian groups, I could think Council for National Policy, those groups never have agent provocateurs. It's always George Soros or the FBI, and they only But anyway, that aside, I actually think, and I want to get to this, and we'll probably get to it more in the second hour, because I think there are some people that we should be looking at with a more of a magnifying glass in terms of their possible relationship to the government or the FBI, anything like that. But I don't even think you really need those sorts of people on the ground in a protest. As you said, it's there. I mean, and I think the people, the agent provocateurs, the real feds, and truly feds in the sense that they're working for the government, they're all on Twitter. They're all sitting at home, like Mike Cernovich or this scumbag, Pasoybic, who is absolutely a spook. He's an admitted naval intelligence, worked at Guantanamo Bay for 10 months. I don't think he was there to, fix the washing machine, okay? And this guy is supposed to be one of the voices of the new right now. They don't like the moniker of old right, so now they're the new right. But those are the people that all have these bizarre quote sources within the White House. And having a source doesn't mean you're breaking a story when basically you're just a stenographer for the White House or for whatever cabinet official you have a relationship with. But I think those are the people that are really kind of fomenting this stuff, like Baked Alaska, this idiot hipster, turned right-wing activist, and then you got those people, the Twitterati celebrities that are out there, and this mixture of like hipsters and strangely connected right-wingers. Then you get these activist live streaming journalists that all have these bizarre backgrounds. Like they were Occupy supporters like Fairbanks and Poole until they became right-wing, fanatics, basically. And they're going around and live streaming and they're talking to people and, those are the agent provocateurs because everybody is so obsessed with social media. And I think that, and I'll throw this to you, Chuck, but none of the alt-right is organic. You know what I mean? I mean, it's organic in the sense that, yeah, there are a lot of people that espouse racist, fascist, far-right ideology. Okay, sure, that's a given. But nothing is organic about the way, this meme factory that they've become, the way that they all know how to, they all change. We're alt-right. No, we're new right. No, we're this right. We're old right. We're, whatever the new name is. Nothing about this is really like organic. And, it does seem that there are elements of this that do lead me to believe they're orchestrating something. But again, you don't need people on the ground. You don't need someone to orchestrate this by having some Antifa Fed agent hurl a rock at some Nazi. All you need are some troll factories out there. And you create the fervor on social media to the point where then you get all these people are like, you know what? Let's go buy some tiki torches and go march on our summer vacation for some, a statue of some guy we probably don't even remember about learning in history class, because who could care? Who could be bothered to learn about that? So, I find more and more that's the, where this infiltration is really going on. It's all in Twitter land, And obviously, there's some overlap with that because, all these people, they're like live streaming this woman being murdered and then commenting on it, and then being like, well, look, somebody hit the car after he plowed it into a bunch of people. Yeah, no shit, somebody hit the car.
Yeah, right.
They're fomenting this whole stuff. And we don't even know if it's, who knows how many of the, Cernovich could be paying for bots. He may not even know it. Somebody could be paying to, create a whole bunch of sock puppets and promote this guy nonstop. And he doesn't even have to be aware of it. And we'll feed into this beast. And I find more and more, I mean, I know I'm kind of going off on a tangent there, but, you know, all of these sort of Twitter celebrities that are basically just there, and they've been leeching off of all of this hate out there and promoting it and whatnot, and they feed into it while claiming, I'm not a racist. You know, I just believe in all this racist ideology. But I don't know. I mean, I just kind of went off there, Chuck. So, you know, I mean, again, my mind is in so many different places with all of this. Well, as you said, and then this woman gets killed, murdered in cold blood.
Right.
And don't give me any of this. They were attacking him. Where? 40 feet up, you know, the road? Away from all these protesters? And even if it was, I love that this has become the intellectual dishonesty. That's okay. Because they hit him, so it's okay that he murdered somebody. You know, and that's a wonderful road for the right-wingers to lead us down to. Because then what happens, you know, the next time a right-winger punches some anti-fascist protesters? Is it okay to blow off his head? Because he started it.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? You know, and here's the thing, and I'm going to disagree with you just a touch. There is an organic element here that I think we need to face up to. I think you're exactly right about the manufactured elements. Okay, there are many manufactured elements, and they're all just a continuously self-feeding prophecy. All right. This is what the alt-right has become. And this is what, you know, a lot of the alt-media has become. Right. Here we go. Well, I'm going to have to stand by Trump now because he's an outsider. An outsider to what? You know, I'm going to have to stand with these people because it's freedom of speech. But it's not freedom of speech when somebody wants to complain about the crass or ugly things somebody else has said. Yes, it is. Okay, so here's the problem. There is a legitimate ugliness that has been under the surface in America for a very long time. Okay, I'm not sure how long it's been there, honestly, because for the most part, it was always said in whispers. You understand? You and I both know that there are people who have racialist attitudes even. Okay, now I brought this up before, and I'm not sure again how much time we have left, but hey, let's fly with it.
We're at like half an hour.
Cool, because here's the thing. A racialist is someone who may, for better or worse, believe that based on the properties of someone's alleged race, they are either gifted or cursed by that particular state of being. All right, I'll give you an example, and here it is. I want the listeners, I want you, I want everybody who ever comes across this recording to think about this for a moment. In your own minds, not the things that you're willing to utter publicly, not the things that you're willing to spill out on social media because you think you're making a great point. Even those who are out there claiming to be the most anti-racist, anti-fascist, whatever they are, blah, 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 blah. All that, all about freedom, all about, listen, I'm just for America and I'm true red, white, and blue. Let me take you down to something else. Black people, in your minds, right? They're better at athletics, let's just say. There was a guy who got himself fired from CBS for saying stuff like this at one point. Yeah, Jimmy the Greek. Yeah. There you go. Jimmy the Greek, who basically said, you know, because black people were owned as slaves at one point, they were bred a certain way, so that it made stronger, faster black people. And this is why they can run so fast. Essentially. Okay? Yeah. Now, was Jimmy the Greek lying? No. But was he ascribing to a particular racial group a particular set of standards? Yes. Now, likewise, other people will say, look, I'm a lot more alarmed by, and even black people will say that they're a lot more alarmed by, you know, say a group of black youths standing together on a street corner than they are by a group of white youths. Okay, fine. That happens. There are people that think that individuals who are, let's take it away from black and white for a moment, Hispanics in one way or another Latinos, whatever it is the proper term is at this point in time. People that hail from a legacy where Spanish may have been a language that their ancestors spoke. How about that? Those individuals, in point of fact, are often thought to be what? Oh, great dancers, let's just say, or people that are more hot-blooded when it comes to being lovers. See, positive and negative, right? But they don't break away from this. White guys, what do white guys do? Well, white guys are just not very entertaining in general. They cannot dance well, stuff like this, and I'm very happy, by the way, that, that when my ancestors came here, they categorized us as non-white. I appreciate that. That's the Sicilian side of my ancestry. And that is the category I would like to remain in. So thank you. I'll remain there. I am not, part of this equation. But I will point out this. If you do want to continue to separate people into racial groups of all sorts, I ask you, what part of American culture would still stand if all you had was one of these racial groups? Okay, why do I say this? Entertainment. Without blacks and Italians, you would not have the majority of music and many other things that you have. Without Jews, you would not have a lot of that as well. So, let's just throw them in too, because they're a topic of discussion, aren't they? Almost seen as a racial group, even though, as far as I knew, that was a religion. But anyway, and I'm not talking about the Zionists, and don't get me started on that. Oh, yeah, because I know I'm going to get the hate mail about that. It's okay. Fine. Hit me. But here's the thing. If you extract Italians, you extract blacks, you extract, hey, look, let's go for the whitest of white people, although they're lower down on the food chain for some reason. You extract the Irish, which, by the way, is the other half of my heritage. Guess what? A lot of America does not exist as it does. A lot of the things that you have enjoyed culturally, a lot of the things that you have enjoyed in entertainment, a lot of the things that you have enjoyed artistically, a lot of the clothing that you have thought of as American standard. A lot of the cities that you enjoy visiting would not be where they are without these people. Just a point of fact, there was also railroads and things that were built by, Asian people, and for the most part, who at one time were also seen as slave labor in this country. It's very interesting that people want to sustain and maintain an America for white people that seemingly was built by a mosaic of others. And they'll even deny partially their own because, an Italian is definitely not racially pure enough to be white anyway. We have all those interesting ethnicities blended into us because the Roman Empire was often invaded. The point is that what do you actually have? What do you have outside of the land which was stolen and really didn't have much on it from individuals that I guess you would call red men? I've never actually seen a red man actually either, unless somebody's got a sunburn. Then I've seen red people. But outside of severe sunburns, I've never seen a red man either. And those are, now called Native Americans. When we were kids, we called them Indians. But I'm asking you the impolite question here. All right, which is, tell me that at some point in your lives, you didn't have some of these racialist thoughts. You want to know why? If you're sitting somewhere within the borders of what we used to call America, you want to know why? Because quite honestly, racial division has been built into our social structure since day one. And it continues to be there. It continues to be seized upon, no matter how much it is the majority of us would love to leave it in the past. It continues to be seized upon by individuals who would pimp it out, for their own political purposes, for their own financial gains. And this, again, is racialist because it's great to get into black music, isn't it? And support black artists, right? Why is it great to support black artists if you're black? Because you're supposed to support your own. Interesting business models that a lot of people have used right there. Isn't it great when you support others who look just like you, supposedly? This is something that's in America all the time. As a matter of fact, we argue about it. Why is it that there isn't the proper representation of models in ads when you're trying to sell us products, half of which are poison anyway? But another topic for another day. Why is it that we're not being represented as newscasters? Because I have to see people who look just like me, because I have to have an identity which somebody told me I have based on a racial description. Tell me that this is not American. It is. Okay, it is, and we need to own up to it, and we need to deal with it so we can dispose of it. That is what the bottom line is. And the reason why this young woman is dead, the reason why, okay, big man who gets on there and goes, I got 2 loaded automatic weapons, and I got another weapon, and I got a knife, and everything else is crying, please, police, don't kill me, on social media. Big tough guy until somebody actually is coming for his ass. Okay, excuse me. The reason why we're dealing with this right now is because we do not face up to that which is ingrained in our social structure, which is racialism, and some people graduate to racism, okay, where they are racist. And you know what? I can guarantee you that at some point a job has been kept from you, a relationship has been kept from you, an opportunity has been kept from you because you didn't fit somebody's comfort zone. Because this is usually the preview of the private comfort zone. You don't, I got to say, I am no fan of Barack Obama, right? But when he came out a couple of years ago and said that, you know what, you don't use the N-word in polite company, but it's still there. Guess what? He was telling you the truth, right? Yeah. This is something that exactly goes on, and I guarantee you, give yourself a week or two, okay, at any point in your life, Pierce, because you're not a black guy. I'm sure you've been around other people who figure you're white, they're white, and they can easily use this term quietly, look over both shoulders first, make sure nobody's there that could be identified in this way or could identify with this word, but this word will be used. You'll also hear every other racial epithet uttered in exactly the same way. This is part of the American culture. I'm not saying I appreciate it. I'm not saying that I embrace it, but I am saying that if we're going to be here, and we're going to not separate into tribalistic states of being where we are completely segregated. Okay, here we'll give North Carolina to black people, we'll give South Carolina to white people. Let Virginia go to, I don't know, the Asians, whatever the Asians are at this point. I don't know. Is that every part of Asia? Because that's kind of a diverse cultural group. Anyway, I don't want to get bogged down in it. But my point is that until we deal with the fact that this is part of this country and not sit there and go, make statements like, I don't see color and nobody around me sees color. Well, then you are obviously rather blind. You can see color all day long, okay, but when you're looking at human beings, you either see your fellow man or you don't. And this is something that needs to be dealt with. I think it's getting better in some ways, but it has not gone away. And what this entire situation in Charlottesville has done is remind us that there are still fools who will tell us that, the KKK and the Black Panthers need to be mentioned in the same sentence. That'll still tell us that, no, I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. That'll tell us that, the right and the left, they are, the left is just as violent as the right. Well, it's pretty interesting because a seemingly not so left-wing organization called the FBI does have a terrorist task force devoted to right-wing terrorism. They don't have one devoted to left-wing terrorism. I wonder why that is. I mean, was there a time in this country when there was left-wing terrorism? Absolutely. Here's what the problem is. Left and right are part of the same thing. When you identify an object, you can go left, right, up, down, inside, outside, but it's still part of the same object. Okay, and the left and the right are literally part of the same object, and they're all infected with similar diseases. And one of these diseases is exactly this. I say again, white people don't exist, black people don't exist. People seem to exist. Sometimes they don't behave in a very human fashion. And sometimes, again, they do not open their eyes wide enough to see their fellow man. They can catch a color, but they can't see their fellow man. They can't see the things they have in common with someone as opposed to the things that are supposed to separate them. This is what the major issue is. Now, if you think I'm wrong about all this, Pierce, I'd love to hear it.
No, just sort of as you're talking there, Chuck, like I said, I mean, I before we even went on the air, I had all these notes, and I should have, maybe I'll cover it some other time, but I have all these notes about, the Twitter right-wingers, and then the true white nationalists, like Henrik and Lana at Red Ice and some of these other things. But, I think, I don't even know if that's really worth nitpicking over, because they're so irrelevant. But what you were just saying there, throughout that whole thing, again, about the racialist past of America, again, it's like, own up to it. On all sides too. You get a lot of racists out there. So I'm not a racist. I just, espouse and believe in a racial ideology where white people are superior and therefore should be running the country. But, you own up to this. And furthermore, what you were saying there too, in terms of this has been ingrained, and it's like, and who's ingrained it? The state, the government. That was all run by a bunch of Masonic old white guys who owned slaves. But, leaving that aside for a moment, that's what I find so crazy about this whole sort of argument is that at the end of the day, we're all still being manipulated by this amorphous, omnipotent force that has always manipulated us and has always exploited our prejudice, our fears, whatever they may be, in order to enrich themselves and hurt us. And again, that has always struck me as more terrifying because, and let's not kid ourselves again, you're mentioning the FBI has a wing on right-wing terrorists. And let's be clear, that's because right-wing terrorists, by and large, have always been closer to the state. They've always fallen in line with what the government has ultimately wanted to do. And you can look no further than, we fought the Nazis in World War II only to recruit them into our own Central Intelligence Agency and NASA and virtually all angles of national security. But we then took those Nazis and put them in place again in Germany to create their intelligence apparatus and their state, and to again exploit their own people for their own racist ends. And I find that is again missed in this conversation. And I know that sounds kind of like, don't you get it? We're all in this fight together. But I really think we should be more cognizant of that because it's a real threat to all of us. And yet so many people just seem kind of whatever. I don't care. I'll use the government. I mean, because you see a lot more and more of these right wingers. They love the police. They want they're complaining about GoDaddy and Google and dropping domain names. And yes, this is classic corporate PR. Like GoDaddy just realized that the Daily Stormer, broke their terms of agreement. And that it defamed Heather Hayes. Everything on the Daily Stormer is defamatory. Nothing is real on the Daily Stormer. You know what I mean? There's nothing is factual on there. But they're using this and they're exploiting this, because they don't want to look like racist. But and the right wingers, we need to take action. Well, what happened to your hyper capitalist ideology? Private companies should be able to do whatever they want. If a diner owner in the 1950s was allowed to throw a black guy out of sitting at a counter then why can't GoDaddy be like, I don't want this Nazi website on our servers? But again, what do they want? They want the government to step in and to help us. And that terrifies me more in a lot of ways. And of course, I'm not trying to dismiss this racist ideology. But again, that the government is the most racist institution that exists. And as you said, they've created or fomented so much of this. And
right.
When Hitler came to power, who were the first people to go? The brown shirts that put him there.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, no. This is the way this works, and let's not forget the American industrialists and bankers and things like that backed the rise of the Third Reich to begin with. Okay.
Yeah. Oh no, of course.
But look, let's put the Third Reich aside. Easy target. Let's turn back to ourselves one more time. When we talk about this deal about, can you refuse to serve gay people? Can you refuse to serve black people? Well, wait a minute. Shouldn't the free market actually be the thing that determines it? You have now struck upon the thing that really gets under my skin constantly, and that is bipolar America also. Let's own this. Every single one of these people, when you try and line up a logical trajectory of their reasoning, it fails. It absolutely cannibalizes itself. And I'm not sure if it's the fluoride, the GMO foods, or it's the idiocy of television where they tell you something is news, but yet it's actually just a debate between people bloviating, the blatherati go on and on about things, and that's supposed to be news. Okay. I don't know if it's that. I don't know if it's a collection of these things, or if it's just that we are so damaged spiritually from, after all, having been involved in so many murderous activities across the globe. The American empire has done a good amount of damage. Let me not leave out big pharmaceutical companies either. Big pharmaceutical companies have us so drugged, in this country, and we are so hypnotically fixated on nonsense. Maybe that's it. But then again, maybe we have to face up to something else, and that is that no one, and I do mean no one, is held to a standard when it comes to this stuff anymore that says, hey, look, you got to make logical sense. Yeah. The people that, they want the government to protect them, but they're anti-government. They want the free market to prevail, but when the free market kicks them out, they're pissed. It's very interesting.
They hate the police, very, very except every time they shoot some black kid. Mm-hmm. In the inner city, because or somewhere else, because he was menacing or something.
Well, that was another beautiful thing from the crybaby on social media too, right? In his big interview the day before, I think it was, or maybe a couple days before, I'm not sure which. Hey, look, when they shot that kid there, and I think even Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown. Okay, they were guilty of stuff, but. So at which point did they become guilty of something that is a capital offense in your mind? And in fact, my friend, if menacing other people is something that is punishable by death, then why are you still breathing? Jackass. But hey, it's America again. We don't have to make sense. We just have to get upset. We just have to get upset for a little while, and then after our attention span wears itself out, we move on to something else. Again, where is the Russia story? Where is
ISIS?
ISIS.
Thank God we had, not thank God, but this horrific attack in Barcelona, because ISIS was about to disappear off the face of. I guess they haven't even connected that to ISIS, but yeah, all of these things have completely left the public's mind. And again, in some ways, it's because they're not actual threats. This is a real threat. This rising tide of just despicable, awful, degenerate people that want to use race and all these things for their own ends. That's the real threat. But we are now coming up on the break right now. But we will continue in the second hour with our good friend Chuck Ochelli. Still a lot more to cover on all of this, so please stay tuned.
to the world's meeting place. American.
It's practically narcotic.
Freedom.
Oh, yes. I like very much.
Radio.
You're an American institution.
American Freedom Radio.
Since the beginning, civilizations have risen and fallen. Rome, ancient Persia, Mongolia, Britain, and now America. Befallen by natural disasters, broken families, moral decay, lack of preparedness and conflict. Don't let this happen to you. Are you prepared? Would you like to help others prepare? AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com is looking for distributors. Email bugoutamerica@usa.com. Go to AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com, a veteran-owned and operated company. But do it today.
And I hope people support American Freedom Radio. And I hope people vote with their dollars and really understand the value of having American Freedom Radio. Because that's my family. If you love me at all, Jack Blood, support American Freedom Radio. Like, my family has literally disowned me in American Freedom Radio. Danny and Don and those guys, those are my actual family. So please support these guys, because they have all the technology, they have all these great things that they're going to do, but obviously they can't do it all by themselves. So not only would I like to see you support them, I'd like to see you retweet them and repost them and really get involved and get on the bandwagon, so to speak, on doing that do-it-yourself promotion, because they're a do-it-yourself radio network, and we just need that so much.
And when we're not invading some sovereign nation or setting it on fire from the air, which is more fun for our Nintendo pilots, then we're usually declaring war on something here at home. Did you ever notice that about us? We love to declare war on things here in America. Anything we don't like about ourselves, we declare war on it. We don't do anything about it. We just declare war on it. It's the only metaphor we have in our public discourse for solving problems, declaring war. We have to declare war on everything. We have a war on crime, the war on poverty, the war on litter, the war on cancer, the war on drugs. But you ever notice we got no war on homelessness? Huh? No war on homelessness. You know why? There's no money in that problem. No money to be made off of the homeless. If you could find a solution to homelessness where the corporate swine and the politicians could steal a couple of $1 million each, you see the streets of America begin to clear up pretty quick. I'll guarantee you that. I will guarantee you that.
You're listening to AmericanFreedomRadio.com, the network who perseveres in delivering intelligent debate, constructive dialogue with true independence. The freedom to broadcast the truth is not free at all. So what is American Freedom Radio worth to you? The empowering information with fun, honest and pure integrity behind it provides an example to follow. Friendships to flourish with the moral altruism that pulls no punches. The hosts sacrifice and show remarkable discipline in their duty to deliver quality radio in service to the community with strength, wisdom and loyalty. The founders of AFR wish to thank you personally for sharing your views and insights to make the best radio and alternative media. Now it's time for you to give something back and play a vital role in the future of America. Be as generous with us as we've been with you. Click on the donate banner at AmericanFreedomRadio.com or volunteer by emailing AmericanFreedomRadio@ymail.com. Vaccine, psychotropic drugs and artillery batteries not included.
Launch sequence initiated.
We're now in the approach phase. Everything looking good. Control is good. 5, roger copy. 3, 2, 1, engage.
Prepare your mind to experience American Freedom Radio. Porkins Policy Radio, offering a unique perspective on everything: geopolitics, culture creation, the reality of the world we live in. Coming to you live from New York City, your host, Pierce Redmond.
Okay, everybody, welcome back to Porkins Policy Radio. I am your host, Pierce Redmond. If you are just joining us right now, we are speaking with our good friend Chuck Ochelli from the Ochelli Effect, Ochelli.com. We are discussing what has been going on since this just discuss. You know, it's funny, Chuck. I want to say deplorable all the time, but the right wing has sort of taken that nickname, that moniker. We're not allowed to, if we say deplorable, that means we're Hillary Clinton. But we've been discussing this deplorable, repugnant situation that's not arisen, but shown its ugly face for the first time in a very explicit way in many years. And again, this is a dark conversation. Keep that in mind. And I think I've already sort of lost my temper while we were talking here, and sort of I didn't get to make all the points I wanted to. But towards the end of the first hour there before the break, we sort of mentioned this crybaby on YouTube. We're talking, of course, of Christopher Cantwell, who people will be very familiar with from his Vice interview. That was making the rounds, and again too, don't think that, again, we're talking about the sort of the non-organic nature of this. Vice, founded by Gavin McInnes, a noted right winger, racist, whatever he wants to say, who founded Vice, then signed a massive non-disclosure agreement with Vice when he left. Has never spoken ill of Vice, and certainly made a lot of money off Vice. He worked for the Rebel media, which is already, as we speak, completely imploding. And Vice always gets these wonderful, Vice is the first people, embedded with ISIS. Now they're embedded with the right. So, curious that it's Vice, this hipster outlet. But of course, Chris Cantwell, can't say no to a camera. And wanted to go in front of, this fight. And, when he was talking, Chuck, before, you mentioned, when Obama said, we shouldn't use the N-word, but it exists, Cantwell sounded so antiquated when he's, using these racial slurs, I don't even know, does he think he sounds cool or, cutting edge or what? But he just sounded, again, like a complete fool. If you're trying to recruit people into your white identity movement, sound a little bit smarter than just dropping N-bombs and everything else.
See, here's the problem, Pierce. Again, I don't mean to disagree with you, but I'm gonna anyway, because I'm sitting in a different part of the country than you are right now. I'm in Georgia. Now, it is a lot more polite out here in public than it is up in the Northeast. I got to tell you, it really is. People to your face are just not as nasty. They're not as confrontational, it feels like. It is a much less politically correct place to be, though. There are many flavors all over this country, okay? And the truth is, in the area where you are, it is still very much, whispered most of the time, unless you're in a position of power. Then you seem to be able to get away with some of this stuff, and people try to take you to task for it and so on and so forth. Oh, wait a minute. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? There was this guy who used to make these interesting sort of comments about people that now is the president of the United States. Again, am I having a stroke? All right. Back to it. All across this country, it's a little bit different in each area. And I got to be honest with you, man. It sounds antiquated to you because of the language that you're accustomed to. The fact is that depending on where you are, again, when we talk about the safe space of things, even people who aren't seeming to be hateful still will make these racialist, racialist statements and judgments, okay, which do wind up affecting people's ability to, rent a place to live, buy a car, get a job. Things like that are affected directly by these racialist ideas, okay? People will think that certain individuals, certain types of individuals, and this cuts all different ways. Not to point to the victim white man too much here, but there are places where, trust me, if you're a white guy, you're not getting a job. If you appear to be a white guy, you're not getting a job. You're not getting in on a particular place to live. You're not getting in because they don't trust you. Okay? And they won't say it to you, and they can't say it to you, and they're not supposed to hold it against you legally, and all of that, but it is still ingrained in the culture. And whether people are speaking it or not, if it's allowing them to see the fact that this fool is out there bluntly doing that is actually not quite as damaging as those that hold it silent and then use it for different purposes, right? Who decide that, well, you know what, I can definitely give the labor-intensive work to the darker colored person because they're used to it. Mexicans are hard workers to some people, right? I know that Mexican guy is going to work real hard and he's not going to ask for much pay. I've heard these statements. I am not telling you how I feel, Pierce. Yeah. I'm telling you about stuff that I've had to hear. I'm telling you about stuff that I've encountered over the years from various individuals, some of them hateful, some of them having no intent of hate. They simply believe that this is the way things are. Okay? And it seems antiquated to you, but really it is just the ignorant utterance of someone who now feels emboldened. Why are they emboldened? Well, over the course of time, them being marginalized, those who would make these statements bluntly, have been marginalized, but they've been allowed to start to make these sorts of statements in places like, different facilities on the internet. Right? So you can say these things from the safety of your home under a Twitter handle. Okay, you can make a YouTube channel and nobody will find out where you live. You can turn around and create a podcast or even an entire broadcasting network. And I'm going to tell you right now, there's a couple of these allegedly alternative broadcasting networks. American Freedom Radio, by the way, is not one of these networks that I'm about to talk about. And even though I departed from American Freedom Radio, it was not on bad terms. I say that again. But I'll tell you this, I don't count them as part of what I'm about to say here. There are individuals out there who are still maintaining the politely racist all the way to the not so politely racist content on their stations constantly for a reason. Some of them just, focused constantly on the Jews run the world, and therefore they are the demons on the planet, the synagogue of Satan thinkers. Those individuals have entire radio networks, have entire websites, have entire chunks of the blogosphere to themselves. But there are others. There are others out there, and I'm going to call by name, Jeff Rentz.
Yeah.
Okay. David Duke and this other moron whose name I can't recall off the top of my head, but David Duke is the most notable. It's a good place for him to be. We're promoting that. And meanwhile, he's an alternative guy. He's a conspiracy theorist. It's fascinating how this all sort of turned. Matter of fact, I got to tell you, Pierce, when I first started in JFK research, late 80s, early 90s, and there, quite honestly, it seemed as though there were a lot of lefty liberal types that were engaged in that activity, that were seeking out the conspiracy theories, that were looking at what the government might have done wrong, what individuals in law enforcement might have done wrong. It seemed as though, it was like an ACLU kind of love fest, even for those who were less educated than others, all right? Isn't it odd that today it is the right-wingers who are in the business of conspiracy theorizing, okay? Isn't it interesting that they are out there really working the angle that was first, the groundwork all having been laid down very early by these lefty types? Now, I do think about, the rise of somebody like Bill Cooper, who was quite clearly a right-wing kind of guy.
Yep.
Even though he had some left-wing leanings, okay? Nobody, unless they're part of a religious cult, falls in line with every single aspect of something, generally speaking. Although the fact that Alex Jones is a $10 million organization, that still has people that can't afford to feed themselves donating money to him on a weekly basis, I got to say, it gets weird. It gets weird out there. But back to it. Isn't it interesting that the infiltrated, alternative media, which has gone to the right-wing side of things, which has gone to the, Russia, the Putin, the guy there, would be a much better leader than Obama because we hate him so much. And I was no fan of Obama, by the way. I'll tell you that the last legitimate president to hold that office, in my estimation, and he even was not 100% legitimate, in my mind, got his brains blown out on November 22nd, 1963. But, hey, and there's been Democrats, Republicans, left-wing, right-wing ever since then. But hey, look, my opinion doesn't count very much. Let's deal with, again, the reality here at home. And that is that this right-wing ideology, which has been adopted by many of the hateful, fearful, and uneducated out there, is being given legitimacy by individuals who come out and try to seem as though they have organizations. They are speaking to individuals' rights. See, here's the sad thing. I actually have some things in common with the guys that are out there on the right-wing side. Like, for instance, I don't believe that the government should tell me whether I should own a gun or not. I really don't. It's a tool. Okay, am I a right-winger or a left-winger? Hold on. I don't believe that any drug prohibition of any sort is sensible in any way, shape, or form. Uh-oh, he's left-winger. Hold on. I believe in the death penalty, but I do not trust the system that is in place. Okay? I do not trust it because it is absolutely so corrupt that I believe that people will be wrongfully executed and railroaded by a corrupt system. Am I left-wing or right-wing, Pierce? I don't know. It gets confusing, doesn't it? If you're actually thinking for yourself. But these people that, encourage other people to fall in line, lockstep with anything, are actually the truly dangerous individuals. And I know you wanted to talk about extremism and the evolution of it in recent history, and I'm more than happy to go through that because, you know what? Even in the Northeast, we got to see a lot of stuff like that, and that's where I grew up, was in the Northeast. Obviously, I don't have a Southern accent, but
well, you're talking a couple things there. Go
ahead.
Well, one thing I'll disagree with you on, Chuck, is I think that in my mind, at least in America, the alternative media has always sort of been on the right to some degree. I mean, to varying degrees. I think, obviously, we can look back to, things like the Realist and Mae Brussel, who we've both mentioned before, and there are other things like that. But, you mentioning Bill Cooper, I mean, there's always been this, you can look at the John Birch Society, which sort of introduced a lot of people into, alternative media topics, things like fluoride and other, and obviously JBS sort of took that to an extreme degree. But I think that the alt media has always sort of leaned a bit right. Again, a lot of these right-wing Christian conspiracy radio shows and stuff. But let me preface that with, not everything they said was completely tinfoil hat Looney Tunes, and a lot of it is stuff that people of all shapes and sides of the aisle in the alternative media believe in, like or opposed to. Government surveillance, drug war. I mean, there's so many different instances where there's overlap between the two. But it's true that in the past few years, I mean, this slow but steady infiltration and the way that some of these right-wing figures have been propped up, like, you mentioned like David Duke, like all of a sudden this motherfucker is he's like an intellectual that is different and a free thinker, and he doesn't use some of his more racist language anymore. He's sort of cleaned that up for prime time, and all this, let's bring him on Alex Jones, let's get him on Red Ice, let's give him a radio show on Rent, let's I think there's a whole episode we could do just on all of that. But
no, absolutely. But let me just give you a little pushback real quick. When it comes to alternative media, if you want to go before the internet, no problem. There was plenty of left-wing underground organizations and publications that existed long time. They are the ones that used to do the leafleting. They are the ones that put out monographs. They are the ones that really. I mean, so there's always been an underground. But here's the thing. Once the internet went from, the nerdist kind of presentation it was in the 90s, okay, because that's what it was. You couldn't hardly use the damn thing in the 90s. I mean, I started using it in like 96. But before that, believe me, it was a nightmare. The thing that was going on once the internet came into play, there's still always been left-wing and right-wing. But in the past, I would say 5 years, the left or the liberalist sort of edge is gone. It's just absolutely overrun with right-wingers who could not possibly get themselves normally invited to the right-wing party because they were too kooky. Yeah. Okay, left-wingers, look, Maria Heller is somebody who's been on the air now for 17 years on the internet. Okay, she was on terrestrial radio before that. She is not a right-winger, folks. I'll tell you that. She's like Earth Day and like a real environmentalist and animal lover and vegetarian and all that stuff. Okay, she's been around longer than most of these people even thought about doing it. And once it became more accessible, though, here's the thing. Once it became more accessible, once things like Blog Talk Radio caught on, once things like, Spreaker caught on, once things like, all these different little broadcast platforms became a lot more accessible and the internet grew exponentially as it did, it seemed to suck in all of these people that were basically the right-wingers who couldn't possibly be invited to a GOP convention because nobody wanted to own them. Now, the weird thing is, you would think that, okay, that's the fringe, that's where it's going to stay. But that isn't what happened, is it, Pierce?
Well, no, I mean, and case in point, the original idiot we were talking about, Chris Cantwell, who, full disclosure, I saw in 2012, back when he was a fat, balding, sweaty creep, who, quote, stand-up comedian. I mean, he was the least funny person I've ever met in my entire fucking life. And he, at Liberty Fest, he gave this horrible, sweaty, he was like hammered when he got there. It was like in the morning, okay? And he gives this stupid speech, and you see him, and he's basically, first off, he's from Long Island, okay? Suffolk County, all right? So he's not, some... you can hear it in his voice. He sounds like this 2-bit loser from Long Island. I mean, you know who I'm talking about, Chuck.
Oh yeah.
And he claimed to be a libertarian, essentially because he hated the police because he kept getting caught drunk driving. Okay.
Right.
I mean, it's not exactly like the a civil liberties crime of the century. Don't get hammered into your car. All right, and start driving around.
It wasn't like he was having. Yeah, it wasn't like he was having his free speech suppressed based on the fact that he had unpopular ideas.
No,
he was getting busted for DWI.
Yeah, he's a fat loser who kept getting busted while he was driving around drunk. Okay, then he becomes a libertarian because of that. Moves to New Hampshire. Starts and curiously, he starts talking. We got to kill the cops. We got to go after the cops. We should, arm up against the cops. This guy's always about his guns and stuff, even though he's always crying then on YouTube. And then suddenly, all these libertarians are like, dude, we are not gonna start killing cops. This is, not our scene. This isn't our bag. and he's basically kind of pushed out of there. Now, cut to, it's not the cops that are oppressing him, it's the Jews and the blacks and the commies who are all working together at the Legion of Doom, run by George Soros. And suddenly, he loves the cops. You can see it in that video. I'll hand myself in. He claims that he talked to an FBI agent in that video. So he's had no problem with, it's all about, it's the racist, it's these races that are against me. These, ethno-religious people that are trying to oppress me. So, just very, very interesting trajectory, amongst all of that. And again, instantly kind of, red flags, is this guy really on the up and up? And, we were sort of talking, a bit, about, you mentioned Bill Cooper, and Chuck, we're both from New York, which is not, you wouldn't, I'm sorry, you're from Jersey originally, right, Chuck?
Yeah, but I did live in New York for a bit, but yeah.
Well, I mentioned New York because, of course, none other than Timothy McVeigh is from New York, upstate, albeit, but I find myself, again, we were talking before, in terms of, the history, these people can't really kind of take the historical viewpoint on anything. They can't, look at these stupid Confederate statues put up in the 50s. They can't really look back and say, you're a nationalist, but you want to secede from the Union. I'd love to sort of sit these Nazis down and say, so you love Hitler. You think the Nazi regime was the bee's knees. So are you cool with the CIA? Because they recruited all the Nazis. Do you have any problem with the CIA and what they're doing? Because they kept employing your heroes. But with that in mind, the sort of lack of historical oversight, right now does in some weird ways have some parallels with what was going on in the 1990s. With the whole Patriot Militia movement, it's not exactly the same, because both those movements, were not originally filled with right-wing terrorists. Now, as you said, we were talking before, perhaps some of them were racialist, had prejudice. Okay, I'm not saying they didn't, but there were also people in there that were right-wing or very conservative, but not bad people. They weren't going to go out and start, hunting down Mexicans or something in South Central. But,
no.
They did believe that there were issues, the government surveillance, government privacy rights, the government, saying you can't own a gun, you can't, but the police and the military can. Real legitimate things. And there was some overlap between the radical right and the radical left in the 1990s. And then along comes things like, mass infiltration of a lot of these groups, more and more radicalization. You get Ruby Ridge, you get Waco, you get things like Operation PatCon, Operation North Star, and others. And then suddenly you move all the way up to April 19th, 1995, and the Oklahoma City bombing. Now, and I'm not trying to be alarmist or anything like that, and I think that in a lot of ways, much of this rhetoric is going to quiet down. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing once the summer is over. But, there is something in the air that strikes me as very unsettling when it comes to all of this. And again, when you look at the historical facts, that again, even these white supremacists nowadays, they won't even look back at what was really going on at Ruby Ridge, what was really going on with McVeigh, and the same day that this woman is murdered in Charlottesville, we get the FBI setting up and then arresting a 23-year-old schizophrenic by the name of Jerry Drake Varnell, who was planning to drive a car bomb into a bank in Oklahoma City, of all places, and blow it up. Now, if you want to read, I'll link up to the criminal complaint. This was a 6-month investigation, initiated, of course, by a paid FBI informant. Varnell had no money, no job, no car. He didn't even have a license. He had a criminal record because he raped his ex-wife in a schizophrenic fit several years prior to this, and then was diagnosed as schizophrenic. And in the middle of his plot to, bring about revolution, he was on a 2-day meth binge with an unidentified female friend who was present during some of the plotting, but was never arrested. He didn't even attempt to detonate the bomb until almost 1 a.m. because he said he didn't want to hurt many people. Now, this is not coincidence. The FBI did not arrest this guy on the day of these horrific protests and violence in Charlottesville. They didn't set up some, again, this guy could have never done it on his own. They didn't set him up in Oklahoma City to not make that comparison. Right. And then you get these people like Chris Cantwell, who's having a meltdown, he's armed to the teeth. And, I don't think the comparison is completely apt, but people who are familiar with the Oklahoma City bombing and what was going on at that time might know Johnny Bangerter, who was he founded the Army of Israel, which was a far-right militia group. He was involved in the Rocky Mountain Militia in Utah. He was at Ruby Ridge. He was at Waco. He was one of the spokespeople for the white power movement. Anytime you wanted a quote, just like Chris Cantwell, you could call him up and get a quote. And Johnny Bangerter was definitely a possible patsy for somebody. He was a target of PatCon and was repeatedly approached by McVeigh himself, even asking him, "I need to get bombs. I need to, where do I get bombs?" and all these things. And Bangerter's, was smart enough to know there's something not right with this guy. But, I bring all this up not to, because I hate people that, predict there's going to be a terrorist event or something like that. But I think we should be somewhat cognizant of the past and of the, history of this. And again, going back to what I was saying in the first hour, the way that the government will manipulate particularly right-wing terrorists into committing massive acts of violence. Mm-hmm. And when someone goes and along with many other people, blows up a federal building in Oklahoma City and kills 168 people, who really cares if they're, Antifa or alt-right at that point? Because again, this is the government perpetrating a massive conspiracy and fraud on the American public to achieve political aims. So I don't know, Chuck. I just sort of rambled and went off, topic there. But, what do you make of that? Because I think there are similarities here.
Well, I think there's a couple things to remember, and one is that first of all, useful idiots are still useful. Secondly, COINTELPRO is alive and well. I don't care what anybody says or what they call it nowadays, because they're still infiltrating different organizations and utilizing this, any of these sentiments in any direction they can to make different points. All right, that's just the reality of the situation. When we look back at the situation in the 90s, it is useful to remember that there was a different sort of right-wing extremist back then. There was a different sort of militiaman back then. They were more closely related to preppers of today, really, where they felt as though society might crash, so they should be ready with their guns and their gold, and and some dried food and canned stuff. Okay, this is who existed in the 90s. They tied this together with this McVeigh, who has never made sense in my mind anyway, who I am convinced, based on what I've looked at all along, was certainly some sort of operative, for an intelligence agency. I'm not sure which one, but I got to tell you, this guy stinks of it. The other thing to remember is, it seems very familiar to you because of a New York sensibility, and this is a Jersey sensibility too, so we have this in common. What happens during the summer? Almost any time that it can, is that this type of strife rears its ugly head. You know, even if you, and I'm not, you know, a huge fan of Spike Lee, for instance, but if you remember, what was the big thing that ran thematically through Do the Right Thing? Damn, it was hot. You know what I mean? And when it's hot in a city, things like this jump off. And I say again, the reason is that this is so deeply ingrained in what there is of the American culture, because, you know, American culture is a scattered, schizophrenic, bipolar mess in reality. So for those who say we need to, you know, defend our culture and defend our, you know, I'd like you to describe it in 1,000 words or less, please. But look, let's just assume for a moment that there is such a thing. One of the things that we can't deny is that there is a racialist aspect and there is a racist aspect to all of it. Okay? That is the truth, and that is exactly what is seized upon by all of this. Okay? That's why I'm kicking at it the way I am. These are the labels that we have allowed ourselves to adopt and to utilize. This is why. These are the handles of manipulation in order to steer the population into the directions that it gets steered into. And again, useful idiots are idiots, and they're still useful. This guy who is, you know, the drunk driver who was angry at one group of people, who was angry at another group of people. I even hearken people to the fact that you described a militia having something to do with Israel. That's interesting enough, right there.
Yeah, no, I know. Yeah. the army. Look it up. Yeah. Army of Israel. Well, because they're the true Israelites, the white nationalists. But again, you know, I mean, talk about. Where the fuck are you coming from with this? So you're the real Jews, you know?
Well, and that's another one of these handles too, because I know very well that you're familiar with a group of individuals who most people would describe as black, who are in New York City, or at least they were when I lived there, and they called themselves the true Israelites, and they would be on the street corner proselytizing and absolutely out there recruiting and preaching to anybody who would listen that the black man is the true Israelite, that they are the actual people of God, and that everything else is an aberration. Again, where is the problem? Because when you go beyond the statement of I am, okay, here I go. I'm going to go spiritual on you real quick, Pierce. Ready? When you go into a statement, you say, I am white, I am black, I am this, I am Latino, I am American, I am, all of these things. The fact is that nobody can wrap themselves around the first two words, which is I am. Okay, I am means, yeah, okay, you are an individual and you're here. But here's the thing, when you go past those two first words, you're way outside of the spiritual realm, you're way outside of the natural realm, and now you're into the area of manipulation, which has been designed. I don't always like to point to the designers, because it seems to have been an incrementally developed thing, but then again, our true history is really hidden from us. The fact is that people have seized upon religion, creed, whatever you want to call it, race, okay, and other forms of identity, to separate us from one another. This is why there is no united front getting anything done. This is why the people are not being served, because the people are not speaking together. The people are not acting as a chorus. The people are not demanding that their representatives actually represent them. And I don't just mean in a governmental sense, okay? The people are allowing themselves to identify. Okay, and there is the problem, identifying. Okay, you want to identify with a group? Why? You want to identify with a group? Why not choose the largest group there is, which is, you know, the human race, humanity, men and women. How about that? How about we do that instead of doing this? You can't get a logical answer to those questions, because you know why? It goes against everything that is American, because as you said before, the government, the culture, the people who are out there profiting, benefiting from the strife and making sure that we stay at each other's throats will never ever want us to abandon the identities of race, religion, culture, to keep us separated. Okay, that's the reality of it, man. And I hate to go there and sound all philosophical, but this is what it all comes down to. And we could talk about the history of it, and we could talk about the recent history and the past history, and how it is that people are pitted one against the other. That's what it is. And here's the thing. As much as we'd like to blame the controllers, the architects of all of this, we need to, again, embrace and own it ourselves, because we're allowing this. Okay? I even have, look, here we go. Am I preaching from on top of a high horse? No, because look, I even play the game just a little bit. Like, I have other people on my show who have a vowel at the end of their name, and I sit there and commiserate with them about both of us being, Italian. Okay? It's a cultural thing, and I don't think that it's bad to celebrate the particulars of your culture. Celebrate the particulars of your culture. Do that. Don't separate yourselves. That's the thing. You're doing it to yourself. You're doing it to yourself. You're allowing yourself to be pulled in. This guy, Cantwell, obviously somebody who is not successful or happy, when it comes to other things, so he's looking for somebody to blame.
Okay, well, classic.
A mirror.
Racist,
a mirror would be nice for this guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Everything is somebody else's fault with him. It's not that he's a drunk and he was a fat, sweaty. I mean, he got kicked off OkCupid too. So he's not, he's not seeing anybody.
Wow. Okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, man. I think this is about personal responsibility, and I know that's a phrase widely hijacked by the right wing, but this is about personal responsibility. And until we can figure a way, I don't have the answer to this, by the way, Pierce. I mean, all I can tell you is that I do my best not to fall into these traps personally, but until we can find a way to encourage others to stop doing that, until we can find a way to encourage others to truly abandon, not change it, not, oh my God, let me prove how not racist I am, but to actually abandon this idea that we are, so separated from one another because of these alleged identifying markers, one way or another. It's not as though there aren't people that have separate talents, and there aren't people that are more talented with one thing or another, but it's not based on a racial identity. It's based on the individual, and that's it. You can celebrate the cultural things, the tribal things of past, but here we are in America, and it seems to me as though the idea here was not to be a bunch of tribes, because if that was the case, we might as well have left it alone and just joined among the tribes that were here. But no, the genocide was committed, and we wiped that out so that we could create this alleged melting pot. I know. Now I've gone all left wing on you, right?
No. But you know what, Chucky? I mean, it's so right. I mean, I think that's so. You sound like this. Can't we all get along, kumbaya? But that's true. I mean, I think again there is a knee-jerk reaction, especially amongst certain facets of the left or the so-called left that see this as their excuse to let's just go out and fucking beat some Nazis, and this will make us feel like men, going and punching a bunch of other depressed, isolated men. But instead of that, looking a little bit beyond that is really important, and I think is needed here, because it is such a slippery slope. And again, all you're doing is feeding into this beast here. And it's funny, Chuck, you were saying this. You support, appreciate who you are, and you'll hear that from these white nationalists all the time. Well, I'm just proud to be white. But, apparently being proud of being white means, marching down the street with a Nazi flag, talking about how the Jews are going to take over. If the Jews were going to take over, wouldn't they have gotten it by now? They'd have to be the worst group at, controlling the world. And while they say the Jews are going to control the world, you'll hear all of these white nationalists going on and on and on about, we're the majority. Everybody, secretly, all white people here should be supporting us because the immigrants are going to come and they're going to, phase out the white people, but we're the majority. Well, if you're the majority, then, come on, get your act together. What are you so friggin' afraid of? And we should be proud of who we are. Okay, sure, go ahead. I'm Chuck, like you. I'm Irish and Italian. I'm proud of being Irish and Italian, but I'm not. I don't necessarily want to emulate like Mussolini in that equation. They somehow equate being proud of who you are means to be dominating other people. To be proud to be white should mean we're smarter, we're better.
See,
we deserve more than those darkies. That's what it means to be proud to be white.
Right, and now you've actually struck upon the actual seed of the poison, which to me is as follows. Again, philosophical real quick, and I'll get to another interesting topic here as I go through this, but it is literally the desire to dominate others that is at the root of all these problems. That's it. That's the end of the story. It is that simple. If it wasn't because, this one's trying to dominate this religion, this one's trying to wipe these people off the face of the earth, this and that and the third thing, which usually are just irrelevant paranoid fantasies, quite honestly. Like, I love the Christians that tell me that, the Islamo-fascists are going to come and wipe away Christianity because as soon as they outnumber us, they're going to do it. Yeah. And I say, well, they outnumber you already.
Yeah, I know, exactly. Right. If they really wanted to do it, they could do it.
Well, if they took over this country, you know what would happen if they took over the country? Well, there's other countries out there actually where they have taken over, and Christians still survive there. I'm wondering about that. And by the way, do you care at all about the Christians who are being slaughtered in Palestine? Probably not, because, you were told to support the state of Israel. But hey, I'm not against them because they're a Jewish state. I'm against them because they're criminals. Okay, excuse me. Anyway, sorry. Point is that when you can actually see that's the thing, though. It's like this need for maturity among all of men and women collectively. And that is that if we seek to stop dominating one another and we seek to uplift all of us collectively at the same time, it seems as though all of these problems would disappear, doesn't it? And, again, I love the Islamo-fascist thing, too, because, there's a country called Malaysia that they run. And as far as I know, Malaysia is not like seeking to, invade every other country and slaughter Christians across the planet when they have them outnumbered. There's also these other people called Buddhists. There's a pretty significant population of them. And, oh, by the way, there's a significant population of what we call Hindus as well that have also not sought to slaughter Christians. So I really wish that paranoid fantasy would go away, but it won't. Because here we are in America, again. Here we are in a global climate where, it is about the juxtaposition, the jockeying for domination, individuals over one another. And it is one of those things that perplexes me constantly. If there was no need to dominate, there would be no need to do many of the things that are done across this planet that are atrocities one way or another. There would be no need to manipulate people through scarcity and fear, which at the end and at the root of much of this, the emotional handle is fear. And this is what the biggest problem is as far as I'm concerned. But meanwhile, don't forget that when you want to celebrate, being American and all that, you need to own all of it, okay? It's not an a la carte menu, all right? Either you're taking the whole thing in or you're not. We were not necessarily founded under the best of circumstances. We do not actually respect our fellow countrymen here. This is not the way that we have behaved over time. And it's only in our recent history that there's even been the illusion of it, quite factually. And at the same time, there is still a festering problem that is not being addressed. So That's how I come down on just about all of this, regardless of the history, regardless of what we're seeing in one particular city in Virginia, regardless of what the MSM or the alternative media refuses to cover across the country, regardless of the fact that somebody could objectively stand back and wonder if there is a mental disease that is dictating the behavior of our alleged president at this point in time, regardless of the fact that there are just really idiotically, PC individuals who have absolutely contributed to this very problem as well. Let's not forget them, Pierce, because those who would cry about all of the insignificant nonsense have caused it all to seem like insignificant nonsense. And there is still, if you notice, there is still a fairly silent, independent majority out there that just simply isn't engaged. When they talk about, 50 some odd % of men did this or that, when it comes to voting, how many people actually voted? Okay? How many people really, even though they just don't participate in the process? And I'm not saying that voting helps. I'm just saying that people make these wide sweeping statements over things that they observe without really observing the whole landscape. And, racism is a lot larger than people want to pretend that it is. It's also a little smaller than what a lot of people want to pretend it is. We need to get a realistic metric on it, and we need to deal with the true roots of it, which to me are the racialist ideas that still dictate a great many people's behaviors. Probably not just here, but hey, this is where I'm stuck. And I'm not allowed to have a passport anymore, so I can't go nowhere, and so therefore I'll be somewhere within the confines of the artist formerly known as the United States of allegedly America, probably until the day I die, and so this is what I have to cast my gaze upon at this point. So, based on my observations here, this is the root of the illness, and until we figure out how to cut that cancer out, we're not going to have a chance at healing. And I think that it is a threefold problem. It is the ignorance, the lack of the lack of integrity in a logical sense, and also this idea of racialism or racial or racism, one or the other or both combined. These are the threefold problems that we're faced with that quite honestly are rearing their ugly head today, and very well may disappear down the memory hole by the time the temperature cools off.
I hope so. On that note, Chuck, I think you're right on so many points there. One is, and I think we say this too as people that you've been involved with the alt media for much longer than I have. But even in my short experience here, we've seen a lot of these racists, out there because they've been floating around, and some of them, pretended not to be a racist until it was advantageous for them to be a racist. But that we work in a microcosm of a lot of this stuff. So, there is this sudden, I'm shocked to find that America is racist all of a sudden. No shit. Where do you think you lived? But beyond that, I think you're right too in that it is small. Look no further than, even the racist Republicans in Washington don't want to support Trump. Okay. Even they know this is suicide, getting behind this idiot. And furthermore, too, so many of these right-wing, alt media pundits out there, so many of them are still using coded language, okay? Or they won't come out and admit fully, yes, I'm a racist. I believe in fascism. I believe in white supremacy. Because ultimately they know that I think they ultimately know it's kind of wrong. They know that it's a stupid ideology, and they're embarrassed at what other people are going to think of them. So that should already give you an idea about how insignificant these people really are. That for all of their bluster and, we're going to take over, we're going to do all these things, they're still sort of embarrassed at the fact that they're white nationalists. That they believe in the supremacy of white people. And I think that kind of, in some ways, is something of a silver lining. You know, that it sort of speak volumes to, as horrible and racist a country as America is, in some ways I think we've made some progress. In that now at least the racists who were, you know, more or less just sort of openly racist, they at least know, like, well, shit, I can't really go all the way. You know, I don't want to look like David Duke. I see all of these people, you know, on Twitter, like, oh, David Duke is a racist. I just believe in everything that he stands for, you know, but he's the bad guy. So, yeah, and I hope, you know, cooler weather will perhaps, you know, cooler heads will prevail out of that. You know, and I know I've been, I got a little dramatic in this particular conversation. I was sort of all over the place. I barely scratched the surface of any of my notes, so I might return to this another time. But you can see how worked up I've been over this whole thing. And I do think it's important, again, you know, for us to really kind of look at this in an honest way. And, you know, I'm speaking to the people out there who are, I'm not, you know, I'm a wonderful person. I support, you know, rights for everybody and Black Lives Matter, all that stuff. You know, really kind of, you know, look at yourself. Really kind of look at this topic. Because I think it goes a little bit beyond, you know, liking something on Facebook or even, you know, showing up at a protest or a march. You know, because again, this is I mean, we could do 2 hours, Chuck, on the criminal justice system, and you know, and how rigged a game that is.
Right.
More so as a rigged game against poor people in general.
Oh yes.
But, yes. I mean, again, too, it is. I think it's time. And I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here, but it's time to kind of wake up and see that, you know, as silly and retarded as you know, I'll break you know, the PC thing, as these Nazi pussies are, they are real. They do pose some sort of a threat to all of us ultimately. You know, be it you know, God forbid some sort of Nazi comes into power and, you know, starts locking us all up, or if, God forbid, you know, one of these Nazis is dumb enough to get roped into some sort of a plot where, you know, hundreds of people get killed. And then, of course, it's going to, you know, everyone's rights are going to be clamped down at that point. But, yeah, I think it is important for people to really kind of open up and look at the situation. And, again, to address this in, like, a mature way, too. Because there's a lot of, you know, silliness going on. But, Chuck, we've got maybe 4 minutes left. Anything you want to leave the listeners with, anything like that, and of course tell us where they can go to listen to your show.
Well, I'll tell you what, outside of the week that we're recording, generally when you guys hear this, I'm 5 nights a week live at Ochelli.com. That's OCHELLI.com, and other networks do carry the show live. Some replay it. There's a few things going on over there, and we're definitely going to touch on this subject starting Monday, I promise you. So, you know, it's something that's not going away. I want people to keep in mind one thing, and that is that even when a collection of splinters are under your skin, they can fester and turn into something much, much more dangerous. So, these splinter groups, these splinter individuals, these splinters of ideas that are out there infecting, okay, the largest organ in the human body is the skin, as far as I know, that are out there infecting and infiltrating our skin as people, must not be allowed to fester. If we deal with them directly, I think we have a chance to extract them and actually heal. And I do believe that the topics we've discussed tonight are exactly those types of problems. The other thing is, I might have said some things that are offensive, and if you are offended, good, because hopefully I've gotten you to think and I've gotten you to feel for a moment something outside of the bubble that most of us find ourselves in regarding topics like this. Thank you so much for having me on tonight, Pierce.
Thank you, Chuck.
No rules. No rules. No taboo topics. No taboo topics. No fear of doom. No fear of doom. We are American Freedom Radio. American Freedom Radio.
Since the beginning, civilizations have risen and fallen. Rome, ancient Persia, Mongolia, Britain, and now America. Befallen by natural disasters, broken families, moral decay, lack of preparedness and conflict. Don't let this happen to you. Are you prepared? Would you like to help others prepare? AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com is looking for distributors. Email bugoutamerica@usa.com. Go to AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com, a veteran-owned and operated company. But do it today.
And I hope people support American Freedom Radio. And I hope people vote with their dollars and really understand the value of having American Freedom Radio. Because that's my family. If you love me at all, Jack Blood, support American Freedom Radio. Like, my family has literally disowned me. American Freedom Radio, Danny and Don and those guys, those are my actual family. So please support these guys, because they have all the technology, they have all these great things that they're going to do, but obviously they can't do it all by themselves. So not only would I like to see you support them, I'd like to see you retweet them and repost them and really get involved and get on the bandwagon, so to speak, on doing that do-it-yourself promotion, because they're a do-it-yourself radio network, and we just need that so much.
You're listening to AmericanFreedomRadio.com, the network who perseveres in delivering intelligent debate, constructive dialogue with true independence. The freedom to broadcast the truth is not free at all. So what is American Freedom Radio worth to you? The empowering information with fun, honest and pure integrity behind it provides an example to follow, friendships to flourish, with the moral altruism that pulls no punches. The hosts sacrifice and show remarkable discipline in their duty to deliver quality radio in service to the community with strength, wisdom and loyalty. The founders of AFR wish to thank you personally for sharing your views and insights to make the best radio and alternative media. Now it's time for you to give something back and play a vital role in the future of America. Be as generous with us as we've been with you. Click on the donate banner at AmericanFreedomRadio.com or volunteer by emailing AmericanFreedomRadio@ymail.com. Vaccine, psychotropic drugs and artillery batteries not included.
Launch sequence initiated.
We're now in the approach phase. Everything looking good. Control is good. 5, rocket copy. 3, 2, 1. Engage.
Prepare your mind to experience American Freedom Radio.